It's me again. Seems like I just won't go away, will I? Anyway, in this video, we're going to begin talking about the topics that Chapter 2 covers. So we're going to talk about population, characteristics of population, and really, for your reaction paper this week, and it is time that everybody does a reaction paper this week. Please try, especially if you haven't done one successfully yet. But for your reaction paper this week, it would be best for you, for quiz preparation, to talk about the topics from the first part of Chapter 2. This video covers some of those, and the next video, the last video that you have to watch this week, will also cover information. And information that you should use for a reaction paper this week. The first videos that cover the 5 themes of geography are very important, and you will have a quiz question, at least one, maybe 2, that come from it. But the majority of the quiz questions will come from these topics, and you're going to use the majority of the Mr. Help information for Project 1. So if you're thinking, Project 1, what's she talking about? Go to the course content section of our Blackboard class and look for the folder for Project 1, because it's there, and it's going to be the place where you can highlight and show off your Mr. Help knowledge. And please use this information for reaction papers this week, since it will really help you prepare for the quiz more thoroughly. Okay, so in Chapter 2, and for a lot of the rest of the semester, we're going to be talking about elements of demography. And so in the word demography, it essentially is talking about the makeup, the composition of a particular population. It's literally, if you remember when we learned about what cartography was, drawing maps, or geography is drawing or describing the earth, literally the graphy there means drawing or describing something, and in this case, people. So demo, you might remember, or you might be making an association of this prefix to the word democracy, which is rule, political rule by the people. So this is a description of the people. And in human geography, this is one of our primary goals, is to understand the composition of a particular population of people in a particular location or region, or the way that we adapt, that some people adapt or modify the environment in one place compared to another place. And all those 5 themes of geography apply to this information also. Okay, so typically when we talk about demography, we're looking at formal regions for our purposes. Sometimes we're also going to look at perceptual regions, such as, I keep using the Bible Belt as an example, but such as the Bible Belt, that's a perceptual region that doesn't have definite borders around it. And depending upon who you ask, the borders are going to be similar in a lot of ways, but probably not any precisely pinpointed location for those borders from one demographer to the next. Whereas geopolitical borders, such as the shape of the United States, or the shape of Mexico, or the shape of the Iberian Peninsula in Europe that has Spain and Portugal, these geographic locations tend to be the ways in which we look at demography, and we try to describe the population of people who are in a clearly delineated geographic region to better understand them. Okay, so one of the first things that we're going to look at in demography, and when we're describing the population there, is we want to know the quantity of people. And so the population, for instance, you can ask, ask Siri. I think I asked Siri earlier what the population of Little Rock was. It's something like 202,000 based on the 2020 census that some of you probably remember participating in just a couple of years ago. So the population can easily be found just by asking Siri for that information. Population density has to be calculated. So if, for instance, you're talking about the density, population density of a city like Little Rock compared to Pulaski County that it's a part of, you would ask for what are the square miles, how many square miles are in Little Rock compared to how many people live there. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because we need to talk about these square kilometers or these square mile compositions here, because depending upon where you are in the world, kilometers might be the dominant unit of measurement that is used, or miles, like we do here in the United States. But you can calculate it either way. So if you wanted to calculate the population density of Little Rock, you would get the number of people, which is something like 200,000, just a little bit more than 200,000, and the number of, square miles, and you would divide this. So I have this little line in between it, and so this is a little bit of math that we do in geography class, but you divide this and you come up with the number of people per square mile, for instance. And if it's a high number, then that means that people are pretty like crammed in, and probably most of the land use has to do with living and maybe working, but you probably aren't able to actually use, so a place with a high population density probably has to go elsewhere to actually produce food. They probably have to bring in a lot of imports from someplace else. So just basically, or just basic arithmetic density just gives us the idea about how squished everybody is, how much elbow room there might or might not be in a particular region or a particular place or location. The physiological density of a place, we get a little bit more specific information from the physiological density. Let me move myself out of the way here. There we go. So here you are using the total number of people in the population. So this top number, like in arithmetic density, stays the same. You're using the total number of people in the population here also. But instead of just a regular old unit of land, like how much land is there in the particular location that you are, the region or the place that you are trying to figure out the density for, you're looking for something that's called arable land. And I believe we have talked about this word before, but arable land means the land that's ready to be farmed or that is in farm production. And arable land indicates how food secure a particular population is. So if you have a number of people with very small number of arable land units, then that group of people is going to have to be dependent on importing their food from other places that have more land available to produce it. If you have whatever number of people with a very high amount of arable land, that population of people can be food independent, they aren't necessarily for sure food independent from others, but you have that option. It's more of an option for a population the more arable land that is available. So the export, the import, the economic geography of a place can be, you can make some educated assumptions, some educated guesses about the economic participation, farming of a particular location based on the physiological density. Are these folks going to be able to be economically independent of other regions, or is there a lot of trade going on, movement of food in this case, whatever kind of foodstuffs that's necessary to support this population of people? And so you can look at dependence or interdependence with other regions based on the amount of arable land that's available in a population. Okay, and the next one, I have an example here. I forgot I put in an example down. Singapore, for instance, is a city in Asia. It's a city country, okay? It's a city state. So there is no countryside. All it is a city, and this is the independent geopolitical unit. And there is no arable land. And so everybody who lives in this city, which has you'll have to ask Siri what the most recent population number of Singapore is, but there is no arable land, and therefore they are completely dependent on imports for all of their food. There might be some industrialized food products produced there. I'm not sure whether it's primarily a financial industry kind of place. Singapore is, so I don't think there's many factories, making industrialized foods, which we will talk about in future weeks. But anyway, Singapore has no arable land, and so they are completely reliant on other locations that do have a lot of arable land available to them in the place where they're located, in order to buy that food that the population in that city-state needs. Okay. So the last type of population density that I want you to, that you must learn about and know, there's quiz questions that come from this video. A lot of quiz questions come from this video. This is agricultural density. So we're still going to be talking about arable land, but please notice the top number now is different from the previous two types of densities. You are looking at the number of farmers per unit of arable land. So we still want to know how much land is available to be farmed, but now we want to know the number of farmers. And this tells us a key thing about the kind of work that the population in the area has to do. Is there a degree of industrialization in the area, or is this an unmodernized place? In other words, do you have to have a lot of hands, a lot of elbow grease, like my grandmother would say, to work the land to produce enough to feed the people in the area? Or perhaps if you have a small number, fewer numbers of farmers for a lot of arable land, then that will tell you that there's a lot of industrialization, probably large equipment and harvesters and all sorts of pickers and combines, etc., that run off of fuels, fossil fuels probably. So these areas that have a small number of farmers to a lot of arable land, you can make the assumption, it will be a correct one in most cases, that it's highly industrialized. And not only do they have equipment for farming, but they have people who know how to fix these pieces of equipment. They manufacture parts for these equipment. They probably have access to a lot of oil to refine for the different fuels that they need to run these equipment, these machines. They probably have a high amount of transportation available, mechanized transportation available, and probably have a very high potential for exporting the products that they grow and produce. And again, agriculture here, I'm focused mainly, I mean, my mind is on plants right now, but it's animals too, right? Like ranching is part of this too. So whether you are farming some sort of livestock or some sort of plant, if you have a small number of farmers, a lot of arable land, that tells you a lot about the degree of industrialization in that area. And probably you can make some correct assumptions from that information about the level, the standard of living and the level of income and resources that most of the members of the general population, back up here in the arithmetic density, this is just the general population. So if you have a few number of farmers with lots of arable land, then probably most of the people in the general population have a pretty high standard of living. They probably have a lot of income available to them, or at least lines of credit to buy a lot of things. There's probably a lot of consumption going on. So these basic calculations of population density can give us a lot of material to go on so that we can make some assumptions that can then be researched about the demography of a particular area, the composition of the people of a particular area. Not just whether we're all crammed into a tiny little place or whether we have lots of room to run around, not just that, but a lot about the level of economic development, industrialization, and even education level in a lot of cases when we're talking about these different kinds of assumptions that we can make based on these calculations for population density. Okay, so there's a lot of quiz questions from this video, and please, in that case, write your reaction paper about these kinds of things. And then also one more video for this week, and that's going to be about population pyramids, how we actually take some of this information about population and break it down even further into age and sex. So we will look at that in our next video, and I'll tell you how to read some of those, and that'll do it for this week in geography class. See you soon.